This is Extra Paycheck Podcast, episode number 10.
You're listening to Extra Paycheck Podcast, where you will learn how to build and grow your own successful online business. Now, here's your host, Alex Soul.
Welcome to yet another episode of Extra Paycheck Podcast. This is episode number 10, and today I have Alex Rodriquez on the show, who is the author of Digital Bacon and who's an overall awesome entrepreneur. So enjoy the show. Hey, Alex, welcome to the Extra Paycheck Podcast.
Hey, nice to meet you, Alex, and nice to talk to you.
Let's begin with the very basics, how I usually begin the show with my guests. Tell our listeners a little bit more about yourself and, of course, about your business. What is that you do?
Right. So what I do is I develop high-end digital campaigns for brands that are looking to increase their visibility and attract more business. Throughout the last 20 years, what I've done is I've worked with some high-level brands around the world, brands like Disney World, Anheuser-Busch, and on and on. The list goes on and on. Sony Entertainment, Sony Music Entertainment, et cetera, et cetera. And some of these campaigns have generated millions of dollars in a very short period of time. I've also won awards in advertising, web, and social media. And I am the author of Digital Bacon, my book that just came out in September last year. Digital Bacon, Make Your Online Presence Irresistibly Attractive is the title of the name of the book. And when my book came out, it reached number 1 in iBooks in the sales and marketing category, and also reached top 20 hot and new releases in Amazon. And I'm proud to say that I am just a few days away from releasing my Spanish edition of my book. So I will be launching that June 1st. And the official announcement of the book, I'm actually traveling to the Dominican Republic next week to do like a nice book release party over there for Latin America and the rest of the world. So yeah, that's kind of me in a nutshell. Is on a personal end, I was born in New York City from Dominican parents. New York, if in case you don't know it, New York City is kind of Dominican land or Dominican Republic Part 2. So there's a big Dominican community over there, and I was born there from when I was about 7 years old. I moved into the Dominican Republic and grew there. My parents left me at my grandparents' house in a very rural area without knowing a lick of Spanish, and I had to fend for myself, learning Spanish while just knowing English. And little by little, I did school, I did college, all those things. Got married in the DR. And that's DR is Dominican Republic for short, right? I got married there and then traveled back to New York City with my wife, and she was pregnant with my first child. My first child was born in New York, and then from there, after about a year, I moved to Florida, which is where I live right now, and I've been living here for about 15 years and working here at my agency, which is called Yummy. We have a staff of about 3 people, and we work with clients all over the world. We've created campaigns for companies in 4 different continents and 3 different languages at this point. So despite the fact that we're kind of hunkered here in Florida, the digital age has allowed us to really advise and stand alongside people in many different countries.
Wow, that's very impressive and interesting. Tell me about that Yummy. It's Yummy Marketing,
yes.
Right? That's the name.
Yeah.
Is this the company that's building all these huge campaigns?
Well, these large global campaigns have been kind of in my past as a professional. Since we launched Yummy, it's kind of like a smaller agency, and Yummy has only been in existence for about 2 years. So with Yummy, through Yummy, we've worked with brands like Sony Music Entertainment and other global brands, but we've also worked with big brand or big companies that don't have brands that are as recognizable as the ones that I mentioned, but they're still huge. Like, for example, one of our clients we've worked with is in cybersecurity, one of the largest cybersecurity firms in the world, et cetera, and so on and so forth. So those I cannot mention, because of confidentiality, but certainly, large companies, our sweet spot are companies generating between 1 and 3 million in revenue per year. And companies, I would say one characteristic of the companies that we work alongside and advise are companies that cannot afford to have their brand devalued by a cheap process, So for example, you can take a small business and they can go to Theme Forest and put up a template and do things on the cheap, a template's like $20, $30, put it up on a WordPress template and they're good to go. That's fine. The ROI from them is always going to be great. They don't really need to have such a differentiation. They don't need to have a high end, let's say a higher end quality than what a nice looking theme would give them. But our typical clients can't afford to do that. They can't afford to look like the guy that bought the theme for $30. I mean, that would actually be something that would work against their business. They have to invest themselves in being different in every aspect of the picture. So that's the type of clients that we work with because we go from a strategic point of view and we also go from a creative point of view. We try to reach excellence in both those aspects.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could only imagine because I think that when you're a small brand and it's kind of obvious that you're bootstrapped and you're using some kind of theme, I think a lot of people actually appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Because they see that you're starting from nothing and you're small. But yeah, when you're like a huge corporation, you can't do that. And I think this is the reason why huge corporations still do TV ads because although they're pretty much ineffective, but they just can't afford not to do them.
Right. There's something to be said about brand awareness, that these corporations are investing themselves constantly in keeping themselves top of mind in a consumer's mindset. But I think the tides are turning a lot, in this recent age. I think more of these larger corporations are realizing the immediacy and the direct approach that digital can afford them. So I think, the trends are actually showing a percentage increase in every year in spending in digital from these large corporations.
And okay, I have so many questions for you because of everything you've said.
Go for it.
But let's start first of all. I guess since you've been doing, let's say, marketing and brand building for about 20 years, it wasn't digital for most of the time. But now, I guess, with Yummy Marketing, it is more of a digital company, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So our primary focus, even though we do traditional work, we do TV ads as well. We produce traditional advertising, print advertising. We produce pretty much everything around across the gamut. But our main focus is on digital. We enjoy what our clients enjoy. We like helping our clients and kind of being in line with them and giving things that they appreciate. And one of the things that our clients appreciate is that hold on metrics, on analysis, that we can show a report and say, this is what we deployed and these were the results. Whether those results met the expectations or they didn't, we can show something for it. Now, if you put an ad on TV, number one, yes, you have a sense of the amount of impressions, but hey, you don't, unless you're really ingrained in that, you don't really know, was there a huge event that day? Was there something in the news that popped up an hour before and now all the eyeballs are on CNN and not on your ad, and then after your ad airs, how do you measure the direct results that ad produced? You can't you don't have that one-to-one, connection between an ad impression and a purchase. You can only make assumptions based on, certain target audiences and certain geographics, but you don't really have that immediacy that you have in digital where you say, here's a click and this click led to an action and this action led to a purchase, et cetera, et cetera. So our clients enjoy that. And that's kind of the spearhead of our approach when we worked alongside with them.
It makes total sense. Actually, my girlfriend, every so often, she comes up to my computer and she's like, log in into Google Analytics. Come on, log in. I want to see. So she actually spends more time looking through my stats than I do and analyzing, and not analyzing for okay, you should do this and that, like, I mean, it's she's not doing it for business or anything of that. She's just curious. Yeah. She's like, oh, that's where they came from. Oh, this is where they clicked. Oh, this is what's going on.
It's certainly a thrill, isn't it?
It's fascinating, actually, to start tracking all that. And yeah, I'm sure your clients love it when you could provide this kind of data.
Absolutely.
Being digital, like, this is what's happening. This is what's wrong. This is what's not wrong.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then also there's another aspect to that, and also sort of lays a groundwork to our continued work. So if we say, these were the key performance indicators that we laid out, and we didn't quite reach them, now we have a basis to say, Mr. Client, Mrs. Client, we recommend that in the next 30 days we do X, Y, and Z in order for us to refine our campaign and meet these goals. Now it's not a matter of, well, why are you making this recommendation? You just want me to spend money or something like that. It's more like, this is what, you're missing the mark by 5%. If we only do this, we can meet the mark or exceed it by just taking these actions. So it gives kind of our advice a lot more of a substance based on these metrics.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Mm-hmm. Let's move on a bit into the next subject, Digital Bacon. What is that book about? I've actually found out about you by finding that book online, but that's a totally different story. So just tell the listeners, what is Digital Bacon about?
Yeah, no, thank you very much. And what I've done with my book is throughout my career, there are things that I have experienced and things that I assume that work because of my work with these large brands and whatnot. But what I wanted to do was sort of codify or just place in a framework what I believe works compared to what I believe doesn't work anymore. And my hypothesis with this book was, if I'm able to find out of these successful campaigns, just kind of put them in a lineup together and then compare, what do these successful campaigns do? What do they have in common? What are the qualities that they all present that in some way, shape, or form contribute to their success? My assumption was, if I can find those common traits, then I can sort of extract those and then declare that a campaign that is successful must have these things, because it wouldn't be an accident that all the successful campaigns have these elements in common. So what I found was that all these successful campaigns have 5 qualities in common. So what I did is I extracted the 5 qualities and I said, well, let's kind of place them in these catchy words. And then out of creative finagling and just the mere fact of what these qualities were, each of these qualities starts with one of the letters of the word bacon, so bacon becomes an acronym, an easy to remember acronym for the 5 qualities of a successful campaign. So I can just throw these qualities out to you at this point, to kind of summarize that. But the 5 qualities, so BACON, B stands for based on reality, right? The successful campaigns, they throw out the wishes and whims because great digital marketing is built on researched facts about the market and about other current market situations. The A stands for aimed towards results, because effective online efforts are based on measurable goals. And we talked a little bit about this just a few minutes ago, right? So every initiative in digital should be informed by a plan that is customized to the business's needs. The third quality, which is the C of bacon, is creatively developed, right? Creatively developed because cookie cutter just doesn't cut it anymore. In order to stand out from the crowd, these successful campaigns manage to be unique and exquisitely produced. The O stands for organized in propagation. So the reasons these campaigns are found by their market is because they distribute their offer correctly. And the N stands for numerically measured, because these campaigns, they never measure the results in form of vague adjectives, but rather as numbers, like we were just discussing. They rely on objective measurements to know whether the efforts are moving their business forward or not. So BACON, based on reality, aimed towards result, creatively developed, organized in propagation, and numerically measured. So that's the thing. And then, when you talk about bacon online, and there's a lot of memes and jokes about it, it's kind of about driving you crazy and kind of being a symbol of attraction. So at the end of the day, the symbol of the analogy of bacon is that your business should be the bacon of whatever you do, right? It should be that thing that stands out, because when you think of like meats in a grocery store, you think about chicken. It's like, oh, chicken is in the freezer or whatever. If you think about ribs, it's like, okay. But if you think about bacon, it's like, oh man, that's a special experience, and that's what I believe every business, whether you're online or offline, should strive to become. You should become a special experience, something that your customers actually look forward to interacting with. So bacon is both a symbol and an acronym for an irresistibly attractive presence.
Totally, man. So that's what the bacon is, and I'm actually having like a little taste of bacon in my mouth right now because of that. So yeah, you're doing that great.
There you go.
Now you're making me think of that. And can you elaborate a little bit more on your O point, distributing your content properly? I think that's what you said.
It's organized in propagation. So just it's all about distribution, right? And this is something that I don't see many people in the online marketing space really dedicating a lot of time on. There's a lot about, generating traffic and strategy, and all of these things are supremely important. But when you're talking about propagation, you're talking about selecting how, when, and in what voice and what manner to distribute your offer. At the end of the day, your message about what you're offering, right? So what I've done is I've broken down the whole concept of distribution in what I call 3 dimensions, right? So there are 3 dimensions in online distribution. Number 1, your distribution of time, right? So there are different times in the day, times in the month, times in the week, and different kind of breakdowns of time in which you can go ahead and distribute your offer. Like one of the time distributions that is very popular is called what we call the drip campaign, right? Where every day of the week, or every week in the month, or however you want to break it down, you just drop a little portion of your message and kind of break it down. So that's certainly a distribution in time, in the dimension of time. Then you have the distribution in space, which in the online, on the online area, we're talking about your channels, right? So what are your spaces? And then in terms of space, we can talk about your owned channels, your paid channels, your earned channels, all these channels that we're playing with. And even there's hybrids of these channels, so you're talking about a hybrid of a paid channel with an owned channel, which one of them could be like your retargeting tactic, right? That's kind of a hybrid between those two, because it certainly takes place on a paid channel, but it has to do a lot with things that you own or have nurtured, which is that audience that has taken action on either your video, your site, et cetera, et cetera. So now you're talking about the dimension of space. And then there's a third dimension, which is one that I call, and I'm not sure what the collegiate term is, but this is the yummy term. We call it particularity. So particularity has to do with what is the audience segment that you're communicating with at any point in time in that portion of communication, right? So there's a moment, a time, and a place that you're going to be talking to a general audience, right? You're going to be talking to anybody that arrives to your site, or anybody that looks at your tweet, et cetera, et cetera. You're talking to a general audience. Then there's going to be portions of your campaign in which you're going to be talking to a select group of audience. So let's say people that took action before a certain date. Now you're talking to a group that is segmented out of the general audience. And then finally, and then you can obviously create an infinite number of subsegments. But then probably the smallest particularity that you can think of is one-to-one, right? So when you're talking from, let's say a customer service concern, or you're sending an individual email or something like that, you're talking one-to-one. And those aspects of your campaign could be as important as the ones where you're talking to a general audience, right? So these are all things that if you put these 3 dimensions together and just create a distribution plan, that becomes something very rock solid for your campaign.
And I think that could expand to customer service, I guess, and client satisfaction. That's, well, in my opinion, that one-to-one relationship often starts there or ends there, actually.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And right now, for example, I am right now in a campaign I'm doing a campaign for an event that I'm going to hold in the Dominican Republic while I'm down there. It's kind of a 3-hour workshop for digital marketing and whatnot. So I'm kind of in this mode of a campaign, and I'm realizing that the more I go along, that particular culture enjoys speaking one-to-one at the same time as they're speaking in a general, in the kind of as the general audience. So people are reacting and responding and asking questions kind of in the open, but they're also contacting us by email and contacting us privately to kind of ask these questions before they make a purchase. And if I were to, ignore one of these aspects, I think I would do myself a huge disservice for to advance my campaign.
Yeah. I had an interesting experience recently. I started selling some physical products online. That's completely another story. Mm-hmm. But what happened is that we had someone, the whole thing is actually interesting because it's totally new to me, because we started an Instagram account for that product, and somebody found us on Instagram. They bought the product, they really like it, they recommended to their friend, who in his turn went to Instagram to follow us and then to buy the product as well, the same product, right?
Yep.
We shipped it out from Montreal to New York City, I believe, mm-hmm. and he got an empty envelope.
Oh, wow.
With a big hole in it. So we actually gave him a product, then we gave him a gift, which was another product related to that. But all he got was a envelope with a hole and with a handwritten note thanking him for being our customer and stuff like that, right? And starting a small company, starting really small, like really bootstrapped, we can't really afford to lose sales. I mean, to lose money. But the first thing we did was a brand new envelope, double envelope so it doesn't rip, brand new product, another gift to the same client, and we shipped it to him because it wasn't his fault. It wasn't our fault either that the product didn't get there. But the main point was to reach out personally and to make sure that he does get the product finally that he initially paid for, and that this person is completely satisfied. Mm-hmm. So ignore that one single client. Maybe he wouldn't have gone to the extent of writing bad things about us, mm-hmm. but he would certainly not create more like this kind of snowball effect advertising for us, right? For initially not really no cost to us, pretty much, very small cost. So
exactly. Well, what you just described is a beautiful example of how these dimensions interact, because you just described a single, in a particularity sense, you described a single one-to-one conversation that you had through an owned channel. So you owned that channel, that ability to communicate with them. And look at how that transformed into an earned channel. So the earned channel are those channels that you have no control over. You have absolutely no control. You can't force that person to post if you wanted to, right? To post good things about you. But you earned that trust. And now that person is talking about you. And in many occasions, those earned channels, they garner a lot more credibility than your owned channels. So you can talk on your Twitter channel, your Instagram channel, all you want about yourself, but to hear a guy that's giving a good testimonial in your favor, that has so much potential and so much goodwill that'll, like you said, you kind of use that term, kind of snowballs into more and more business for you.
So to conclude the whole thing, interacting with that one person that sent you an email is, I think, crucial, and in many cases, and I hope people are not passing that thought, into one year and then letting it out through the other year. This is really important, and you have to communicate with your clients, even if sometimes it's really simple and basic questions. Yep. Still try to answer every single one of them, and especially when you're starting, it'll be hard, but then eventually when your brand grows and your company grows, you hire a person who's dedicated to doing that.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely,
in the end, your customers are taken care of.
Absolutely, most definitely.
So that a lot more people could find out in Digital Bacon. I'll put the links to the book in my show notes so people could check it out. So let's move on. So the question is for you, let's say someone's starting a new company, a new brand, a small brand, right? Mm-hmm. What would you say would be the first most important thing that they should concentrate on when trying to build that brand? And I mean concentrating online. the efforts online, what is the first thing they should really concentrate on?
Yeah, and just kind of returning to the framework of my book. So these 5 qualities in the digital bacon formula. What I've done in the book is I've converted each of the qualities into a process, right? So this is what I call the digital bacon process. So based on reality, which is the first quality, I've recommended you go through what I call a discovery phase. And I'll kind of go back there, and then I'll go back to the beginning if you're okay with that.
Sure,
so aim towards results responds to a strategy phase. Creatively developed response to a production phase, organized and propagation to a distribution phase, and then numerically measured to an analysis phase. So within each of these phases, there are certain actions that I recommend you take, and I speak about that very clearly in my book. But now let's roll back to the beginning and kind of respond directly to your question. So based on reality, the discovery phase that goes along with trying to reach that quality for your business is the discovery phase. And in the discovery phase, what you're trying to do is really look at what does the market look like? Not only what are the situations, what is the demand that your product or service has right now. And I kind of move away from talking about product service all the time. What I kind of summarize it with your offer. So at the end of the day, we're not pushing products nor services. We're pushing an offer, right? Because the offer is a combination of what product or service you're offering, and for what price and what method, and what's the time that person is going to have that in their hand. So all that combination of components is your offer, right? So at the end of the day, we're online. We're just communicating an offer. And so what is the demand of that offer right now online? This is something that you can certainly do using certain tools online. And then really looking at maybe there is an X amount of demand for one certain offer, but you're looking at the scene online, you're looking at your market online, and you're saying, well, maybe if I tweaked my offer in this way, so by tweaking it, you could lower the price, you could offer a quicker shipping period. You could maybe include more bonus items in your offer, et cetera, et cetera. There's so many ways you can tweak it to say, not only can I take advantage of the demand that exists right now for something that's a little bit more beefed up, but I can also kind of expect a little bit more percentage or more probability of success for my offer at this point. And then in the discovery phase, there's also this aspect of identifying who your ideal audience is, right? So there's no instance, I don't know one brand that says, you know what, our offer is good for anybody in the whole wide world. Every successful brand says, this is our ideal customer base, and whether people outside of our ideal customer base purchase or not, that's great. But this is what we see as our sweet spot of people that are going to take advantage of our offer. Like I mentioned to you at the beginning, the sweet spot of Yummy is corporations between certain revenue levels that have a high concern in how their brand is perceived online. That's a sweet spot we work with. We don't really help. I mean, we're probably not affordable for a company that really doesn't think about their brand identity as something that's very important. So we can identify that and say, well, based on that, now I know I need to focus on this type of client or this type of customer. So this is something. These things that I've kind of thrown out, these ideas, I would say are the main things that a business, no matter how small, should be looking at before they deploy any type of campaign online, because the idea on basing your campaign on reality is going to give you a lot more of a probability of success than if you just make wild assumptions and just kind of go with a machine gun and just start firing your offer online without really knowing where does your ideal customer, where do they play in? What channels do they play in? Where geographically are they? Are there? What kind of language do they like being spoken to? Right? All these things I think are going to be foundational and essential for any brand that's starting out.
Thanks for answering that. And this, your whole explanation makes me think of that phrase, "Jack of all trades, master of none."
Yeah.
See, that's the same kind of thing that I've seen. Well, I've done it myself. I started offering marketing services locally, and I was offering completely everything. You want a website? Yeah, sure. Content? Yeah, I'll do it. Reputation management? Of course. Video creation? Yeah, we can do that. And, in the end, you'll never get known for your service because, when you do everything, I think people, also clients, they don't take you seriously because, well, if this guy does everything, probably he might do something really good, but he can't do all of those things very well, right?
Right, exactly. Absolutely.
Yeah, and you don't feel it yourself when you start this kind of company. And I think this is a really, really huge issue for a lot of people that start a business, especially online, because you want to do everything.
Yep.
Because, when you think, okay, I'll just do video production for people online. First of all, you're like, yeah, but there's so much money in audio production as well. Like I'm losing out on these sales. And creating web design, even more demand. I don't want to lose out on those sales. So I'm going to add that to my offer too. And it just doesn't work because if you start doing video production and people start talking about you, and eventually, everyone will know that, okay, this guy is the guy for your videos. This is who you contact, not anybody else.
Exactly. And that's certainly true in just kind of clarifying your deliverables. So what are the things what is your offer? But it's also true in terms of what type of person or what type of business do you work with the best? I think, when I mentioned, well, listen, I work with companies generating between $1 million and $3 million in revenue. The question I get the most out of, in networking meetings and things like that is, well, do you do anything for smaller businesses? And I'm like, well, sure, let's have a talk and let's see how we can help each other. So I never get people saying, oh, well, that's not me, I guess. It's more like, well, if you work successfully with those type of businesses, maybe you can do something for me. And then, it opens up the opportunities. I'm not going out fishing that type of client for myself, but it still piques their interest, So defining your niche and defining like who you are and who you work best with, I think it doesn't really push business away. On the contrary, it shows that you're so focused and so clear on what your values are that more and more people are going to want to inquire about what you offer.
Yeah, and I guess in your case, you could just say, sure, I help small businesses as well. Go buy my book.
Exactly.
Which is helpful in the end, right?
Yeah,
that's the whole point of writing a book such as yours.
Yeah.
It's to help people move their business forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have a good story about that. As I was writing my book, a friend of mine, I mentioned to him, hey, listen, I'm investing so much of my mind and my time into this, but I really want to say everything that I know. I want to put everything I know in this book. And my friend was like, are you sure you want to do that? Like you should be a little bit more cautious because maybe your competition is going to take, your ideas, or people are going to not want to work with you. And I'm like, you know what? I don't really care. I live in an age of more of a collaboration mindset where, if you can fend on your own and take my knowledge and run with it, more power to you. That's great. That I would actually enjoy hearing testimonials of people that say, Alex, I took your book and man, it really helped me do this and this and that. But if you find that it's too much work or too much effort or too much time and you want to work with me, that's fine too. Let's work together. Let's find a way in which we can collaborate. But I think that time where my information is so valuable that you have to jump through hoops to get to my information, I think that age is either dying or it's already died years ago. And now there's an age of more open information, open collaboration.
Totally. On episode number 4 of this podcast, I had a guy, Kevin, from Wet Shave Club. This is a subscription shaving box. And they started in April 2014. They started a brand new company, just 2 guys, small scale. And within a year, they had over $300,000 of sales with this company, right? Mm-hmm. And what they did is that along the whole journey, they documented everything and they shared it on a Facebook group, on Reddit as well. And they would give out all the details. Like, here is where we found our product providers. Yeah. Here's how we did marketing. Here is our exact PPC campaign. And they're so totally transparent about every single part of that business that, it's really surprising to a lot of people. Like, wow, your competitors are going to destroy you. Yeah. And these guys are like, they can try.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would just make an assumption and ask them whether that's affected their business or not. And I would almost guarantee that it's done the whole opposite. It's increased their business, it's increased their visibility, because that's the era in which we live. We live in an era of just free, open information. Obviously, you're not going to tell everything. Maybe it's kind of like your financials. There's always something that is you're going to keep under wraps. But man, there's so much. I mean, this podcast itself, I know your goal is to share information and empower people, inspire people. There's so much good information out there. Then why not jump on that bandwagon and just start sharing with others?
Yeah, and the same thing happened to me when I became a bit more transparent about everything I do and how I do it. I've noticed a lot more results. I've noticed my traffic going up, my readers' interaction going up, because people feel that I don't even know how to explain it. I guess people feel more like you're a real person that actually does want to help them.
Yeah.
Instead of, when you just say, I really want to help you, so buy my book, and in there you'll find out all the good information, right?
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
But what you're doing right now on this show today, you're giving out a lot of main points and really valuable information from your book, right? You're not just going, yeah, it's good for any business, just buy it. You're actually telling bits and pieces from inside of your book, and I'm sure this will encourage people to buy the book, not just an empty promise of this is helpful, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that's what I would want if people are interested in these things that we're talking about. We've laid out the framework here, and we can talk as much as we'd like, but naturally there's a book is going to be a lot more detailed and whatnot, just going to kind of lead you by the hand. I also have in the book 7 or 8 different worksheets that you can download and start working on these things. So, we just talked about the discovery phase, right? So I have a worksheet that you download, and I think it's a 6 or 7 page worksheet where and in the book, it's kind of just leads you by the hand as far as how to explore, who's your ideal target audience, or where do they lie, et cetera, and just kind of leads you by the hand. And at the end of the second chapter, you're going to have a complete snapshot of who your ideal audience is and what's your optimized offer that actually will work online. So these are things that I'm saying it out there. If people want to take advantage of it, it's maybe the price of 2 or 3 coffees. Just take the book and just run with it.
Exactly, totally worth it.
Yeah.
Okay, Alex. So let's get back more into your personal story.
Yep.
And can you share how did you made a switch from working for a big firm into starting something of your own and becoming an entrepreneur?
Yeah, so I started my career in the creative area, and you mentioned video production a few minutes ago, and that's really what my focus was when I started my career. But I started in the Dominican Republic, working for agencies that were kind of affiliates of large global agencies, right? So let's say if Saatchi and Saatchi has this brand. Well, the local brand in the Dominican Republic was kind of obligated to work with the local affiliate of Saatchi and Saatchi, right? So I, from the outset, since I was an intern, I started working with large global agencies, working under their guidelines, understanding brand guidelines, understanding, all these things. And that was kind of my kickoff into the advertising world. Then, I went up the ranks and moved, like I mentioned, to New York City, then down here to Florida. I worked in a production house. I worked in a broadcast a broadcast channel, and then my start as an entrepreneur. I always had the entrepreneurial spirit, but with 2 kids and a wife and a house and this and that, you always have that fear that's pulling you back. And man, is this the right time? And is this the right place? And da. So my kickoff was very similar to giants like Steve Jobs and other people. I was shown the door, and I was said, we are going to move on. And my last employer, just let me go. And at that point, I was like, you know what? I've been waiting for the right time, and now I don't have to wait anymore. This is the right time. So we left in good standing. It wasn't like anything controversial. They just had a different focus for their business, and my focus was purely in digital. So we shook hands. I took off, and I said, you know what? I can either hunt for a job or I can just start my own thing. And I kind of started doing both at the same time at the beginning. But as I went on, I formed my company, probably the next day that I was on the street, so to speak. But as soon as I formed my company, I had a very clear vision on where I wanted to go. And I started talking to a few people, past business relationships. And I found that there was a need for people to kind of work alongside, and kind of a need for what I was offering at that point, which was refined creative with a strategic background. So little by little, that was kind of the first year, and then the second year in business, which was last year, was when things were kind of a little bit more solid. My vision was clear on what I wanted to do and how I wanted to help my clients. And then I came up with the grand idea of, let me just write a book, because the book is going to be much more powerful than a business card. When I say this is what I do, I can show my book and say, this is not just what I do. I can, I've laid out, what I do. I've clarified that in my book. So all that has helped to not only have internal clarity in me, but also external clarity when I'm speaking to other people. So from being off on the streets, so to speak, to forming a working profitable company, that's kind of the path that I took, and I really have no regrets.
That's awesome. And the question that I started asking pretty much every one of my guests, through your entrepreneurship career, if you want to call it career, everybody goes through this very, very dark moment and a low point where you might be telling to yourself, no, I shouldn't be doing that. I should just stop all of that and get a job and back to real life. Have you had this point? And if you did, what was it?
That's an interesting question, because I think my doubts were at the very beginning, before I was fully engaged in my agency. At the very beginning, like I mentioned, I was like in between job applications and then just pushing my business forward a little bit. So at the very beginning, I didn't have that clarity that once I got fully engaged and I said, you know what, I'm not going to do the monster.com nonsense anymore. I'm just going to go straight forward with my business. From that point on, I didn't really have doubts or I mean, honestly, I didn't think that I would go backwards. Now, I had some dark moments for sure. One of them was that I started my business kind of more with a freelancer mindset. Instead of working as an agency, working kind of as a consulting basis, it was more like trading time for services, which is, when you come to think of it, that was what I was doing as a professional for close to 20 years. Was in the agency world, I was pretty much in production, whether I was advising or I was actually hands-on producing the work. It was more about trading time for money, right? So I started my business with that same mindset of, okay, you pay me and I'm going to work X number of hours and I'm going to deliver this. So what I did was that was kind of a dark point in my business, because I realized that in order to be more profitable, I had to dedicate more of my time, and being a person that, with my family, I think I mentioned that I've been married for about 16 years. I got 2 kids. One of them is a teenager, et cetera, et cetera. So within that mindset, if I wanted my business to be more profitable, that means I had to remove time away from my dearest, most loved, individuals in the whole wide world. And that was really dark in my heart, because I wanted to be more profitable, but I was, it was kind of two forces pulling against me. So what I did was just rethink my business model and say, okay, well, first I'm going to bring on team members. Number 2, I'm going to clarify my process. I'm going to just, create more of a consulting advisory mindset rather than, trading deliverables for money. And through that, I think I've reached a point where it's not so much about, the deliverables that I can give you, but it's more about what solutions I can offer to your business. We can talk about more in terms of business on what are you investing, what are your goals, how are you reaching there, and then I can advise certain things, whether you're going to do them on your own, or we can assist you, whether it's producing assets or managing campaigns. We can certainly assist you on that, but the goal isn't to send you a Dropbox link and you're downloading it or just putting up a website. The goal is to help you become more profitable as a business. At the end of the day, that's we're a solutions provider. We're not an asset or deliverable provider. So I changed my mindset, and that sort of got me over that hump of that dark area and those conflicting forces that were working against each other and kind of inside of me, in my heart. And that's really how I pulled out of that.
Thank you for sharing this, Alex.
No, you're welcome.
And before we wrap it up, I have one last question for you. And this is also relevant to your own entrepreneurship career. If you would offer one single tip to any beginner entrepreneur who wants to start something of their own, your most important tip, what would it be?
That's a great question. I guess the most important tip, the way I can really inspire young entrepreneurs, is to shoot high. Those two words are kind of summarize what I believe I stand for and what I strive for as well, is to shoot high. By saying shoot high, I'm saying I'm going a step further than aim high, right? Because aim high is, you're looking at the star and you're aiming toward it, but you don't want to just aim at it. You want to shoot for it. You want to go for it. And
that's a good one.
Yeah, well, and shooting high also means, if other people, you got your Steve Jobs, you got your Bill Gates, you got your Warren Buffetts, you got your Elon Musks, they all had a very meager, humble beginning, a beginning in which there was a lot of uncertainty. They had a lot of doubt. They didn't have the access to great teams and great resources that they had in their latter years, right? But they certainly were in the place where most of us have been at one point or another. And whether you aspire to be as big as these people are or were, in the case of Steve Jobs, whether you aspire to be at that height or not, at least the fact that they achieved it, the fact that they got there by thinking big and shooting high, that says that there is an opportunity for each one of us, right? There's an opportunity to create and build a profitable, sustainable business. But shooting high has to start first. Has to be the first step. If you just do your small, narrow-minded actions every day, or you don't take action on certain things, then the rest just doesn't follow, right? One of the stories that I can mention is kind of going back to my book. So I was looking for who was going to write the foreword from my book, right? And I was thinking about people in the area, people that are certainly capable, someone that could kind of give me a pat in the back and say, yeah, Alex's book is solid and whatnot. And I said, you know what? I'm going to shoot high on this. I'm just going to go. I'm just going to shoot high. So I went and I asked, who do I look up to and who do I think that would be a good pat in the back? And I looked up Chris Brogan, Chris Brogan is very well known. He's according to Forbes magazine, probably the number one influencer on social media. And I just reached out to him and I said, Chris, hey, we've tweeted each other. Would you mind, looking at my book? And he accepted. So on the cover of my book, it says foreword by Chris Brogan. Now, and he certainly wrote the foreword to my book and whatnot. So the only way I could have reached, somebody with the clout that Chris has to write my foreword was just shooting high, just going for it full force, without thinking, having doubts on, who am I? Who's Alex? Just an immigrant from New York, Dominican guy from New York. If I put those thoughts in my mind, then I would have never taken that step. So my advice, the way I would wish your audience to be inspired, kind of in a nutshell, is shoot high, go for it. The worst that can happen is just you fall short of your goal and you learn something in the process. But the best that can happen, the kind of the payoff of shooting high would be just to reach your goal or reach somewhere just under your goal. And then, you have some great results to show for it for life.
Thanks, Alex. That's totally awesome advice. And it's the first time someone gives this kind of advice on the show.
Awesome.
So shooting high is a great way to think about it. And I have the same issues, or I would say I had the same issues many times. And it applies even to this podcast. When I would think that, even you, right? I would be like, well, this guy wrote a book and he's serious and he's busy. Who am I to contact him and ask him for his time,
right.
And I've had, but then I started thinking, what's the worst thing that could happen? So I just started contacting awesome entrepreneurs that I personally would want to hear advice from and get in touch with, right? And the worst replies that I got were basically people saying, we only give interviews to podcasts that are the top 3 in iTunes of all time. Mm-hmm. So really, really huge podcasts. And you know what I reply to those people? I'm telling them, okay, then I'll get in touch with you in a few months.
Exactly. Awesome.
All right, Alex, thank you. And before we say goodbye, I'd like you to provide your contact info. What is the best way for people to contact you or to find more about you?
Yeah, my agency site is Yummy Marketing. So it's YMMYmarketing.com. And I'd also like your audience to visit my site, creativestrategytips.com, which is kind of where I post articles and other helpful information there. creativestrategytips.com/paycheck. I also have some special resources for your audience. So if they want to go to creativestrategytips.com/paycheck, I've got the first couple chapters in Digital Bacon, free download. I've got a book that I wrote that I've no longer it's available. So this is special for your audience, which is called the Creative Strategy Manifesto, and you can download it with for free, completely for free. And then I have another small resource that's called the Attraction Checklist, which is 76 tips to make your online presence more attractive. That you can just go there and grab it for free. It's free resources for your audience. Just pick it up at creativestrategytips.com/paycheck.
Thank you so much, Alex. It's really appreciated, and we all love free gifts. And thank you so much for coming on the show. I had a pleasure having you here and having this chat with you. So thank you so much again.
Thank you very much for inviting me, and I also had a great time.
Thank you so much for tuning in to yet another episode of Extra Paycheck Podcast. You can find all the resources and other things we talked about today at my show notes page, which is located at extrapodcast.com/10. Also, I would love to thank each and every one of you who left me a review and rating on iTunes. If you haven't yet, you could do that at extrapodcast.com/iTunes. It really helps, and I really, really appreciate it. Once again, thank you for tuning in, and we'll talk next Monday.